Welcome to Talking Treasures, a CTV Perth production. Today we're coming to you from the Old Kalamunda Hotel in Kalamunda. We've got an exciting episode for you with lots of treasures and objects that our viewers have brought in for our experts to have a look at. Our experts are Matt Donnelly on collectibles, Gilly Hayes on jewellery and silverware, John Stringer on fine arts, and Grant Stone's going to have a look at toys and books. So stay tuned for some advice and some history. Let's go have a look.
Up at Kalamunda Hotel here, I've got Peter with me, who's brought in a couple of items. Quite a unique little item, Peter. Where'd you come by that?
In Surrey, in England, it was a gift.
Oh, really? All the way from Surrey?
Yeah.
And what we do is we wind it up at the back, and I'm presuming it moves.
I believe it waltzes.
The waltz, okay. Oh, let's have a watch. That's fantastic. Don't come this way. Can sense the edge as well.
Yeah. No, I don't think it does.
We just timed it well.
Yeah. Started off on the right spot.
Yeah, quite a nice little item actually, and for the age of it, you've owned it since what, about the 60s, 70s?
Yeah, 60s,
and then you believe it's to be somewhere around from around the war era, 1930, something like that. Yeah, it's a very nice little item. If it was made of tin, it would probably make it quite a lot more valuable. But as you mentioned, it's had its little bit of damage, which you've done a good job to get it back together. It's got the winder mechanism built into the back, which is great. A little collectible like that, I've seen sort of similar sorts of things sell on eBay for somewhere around a couple of $100 Australian. I would think in a local auction you wouldn't get that sort of value for it, but in the international market I think it'd bring a few $100 or £150 maybe. But it's a nice little thing and a great novelty item, and I'm sure you've had a number of people interested in it over the years.
Yeah, people
they must like
it. Don't they?
Yeah, certainly different. Well, that's a nice little item that you bought in. The other one you bought in is a porcelain figurine, and that's very nice as well. How long have you had this one?
Oh, maybe 10 years.
Okay, and where did you pick it up from?
It was a gift to our daughter.
Right, well someone was very generous there. This would have been made in about 1920 to 1930. It's a show jumping horse obviously, and made by the factory Beswick.
Yeah.
Got the Beswick stamp underneath there, and obviously another good English porcelain China maker company. And Beswick these days is quite collectible, especially the horses and the foxes and the cows and the animal series. They mainly did figurines, never really dived into the dinnerware and tableware. They did a few decorative vases and things like that. I would expect a piece like that at auction to bring somewhere in the vicinity of probably $500 to $800, something like that. Because it's a very good subject. It's in perfect condition. I've looked all over it. These are notorious for their tails being broken or their ears coming off or hands damaged, but this is in mint condition and it's not faded, there's no paint damage. But I would say if this was in my home for insurance, I would have it insured for about $1,200 or $1,500, because if you went out to replace a piece like this, that's the sort of money you'd have to pay for one. Yeah, and does your daughter do show jumping or anything?
Oh, no, but like all girls, she went through a horse stage.
Okay, and she was lucky enough to be gifted this. Yeah, well, it's something you should tell her to look after and put in a cabinet, because the day she's finished with it, a collector would love to have that. And this is certainly quite a rare model, because we get lots of the little animals were cast in their thousands, but these bigger pieces they made for the show in the window. So they'd make a big piece, Beswick's in town now, and they'd sell all the little ones off it, but not many people had the money to buy the expensive pieces. So not a lot of them were stole throughout Australia. But yeah, lovely piece and very nice to see, so thanks for bringing it in.
I think that may have come from Rhodesia.
Really?
The people who gave it to our daughter.
Yeah, well, it's certainly English made, and sounds like it's a well-travelled horse as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks very much for coming in today. Another great find on Talking Treasures. 2 interesting items, matter of fact. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your interest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, you're viewing Talking Treasures, and we're here at the Kalamunda Hotel talking treasures. Some of the material that I've got around about me is a collectible area that many people will have looked over in the 1950s. This material was available at very cheap prices in Australia on the newsstands. These are digest magazines, all of them which were detailing science fiction in the 1950s or telling science fiction stories. And much of it was reprinted in Australia for an Australian consumption. It wasn't written by Australians largely, and obviously a magazine called Selected Science Fiction Magazine or American Science Fiction Stories is telling you where most of this writing is coming from. It's coming out of the writing market of the North American magazine scene of the 1950s and is being repackaged in Australia. What's unique about these magazines is that it became an area in which a number of comic artists could find almost full-time work for a period of time in the 1950s. And one of the best of the Australian comic book artists, Stan Pitt, found himself as a comic book cover artist in these magazines. And his artwork is superb. He also published, or tried to publish, a number of science fiction stories himself. American's Alfred Bester, for instance, he illustrated one of those stories, but it never saw the light of day. It's quite a celebrated case of great artwork by Australians working within the science fiction field that never actually found its way to a publisher. But in the case of American science fiction, he did maybe 30 covers over a period of 3 or 4 years, and all of these covers are very collectible. If you're dealing with magazines of this age, the 1950s, and newsstand material, there are a couple of points to look out for. One is the state of the magazine at the spine. You'll notice that these magazines are crisp and tight, the staples are clean, or at least they're just showing the faintest sign of rust, and that's almost a mint condition magazine. These magazines have been read a number of times, from slight wear on this cover, although someone's decided to colour in the legend, The Lonely Planet, on this to this magazine where it's really starting to show great amounts of wear at the spine, which is where, in the case of these digests, they do start to wear. Although this magazine is still saleable, it's not as collectible as the mint condition of the earlier magazines that I just showed you. This is not the only magazine, that's American science fiction, that was on the market at the time. In your average news agency, there may have been 15 to 20 titles of a similar size and a similar nature at a similar price that were being racked, and there's a variety of them shown here. So future science fiction, popular science fiction, all of these were part of the market in the 1950s. All of them these days very collectible, and for most Australians these days, getting as rare as hen's teeth. If you have them at home, hang on to your collectibles, take them to a dealer and recycle them into the readership if they're of no longer interest to you. Please don't throw them out.
You're watching Talking Treasures, a CTV Perth production. I'm with Gilly Hayes again. Gilly, this is a very, very interesting piece.
It is, isn't it? It's not a high value thing, but I brought it along because A, it's a curiosity, and B, costume jewellery, vintage costume jewellery at the moment is very, very popular. I sell an enormous amount of this sort of 50s and 60s stuff, and it's extremely inventive. This is a shoulder drape. These were worn wherever you like, really, but it's designed to go over the shoulder. I've got another one here. I'll take him off. I've got another one here that he's delicious. This one I love. I've never seen one. I've seen lots of leopards. I've never seen an elephant. I think he's very fetching. I don't know what you think. Don't you think he's different?
Certainly different.
These, I mean, they're the sort of things that mum or grandma might well have kicking around in the you know, the dressing table drawer.
Kind of forgotten about them when they went out of
despite
fashion.
the fact that they're not high value, they still bring. I mean, we normally sell them for around about $100, $120 each, depending upon how many ladies and how keen they are. You know what us girls are like. Once we get into an auction, we decided we want to wear this thing, then we get a bit competitive. But I would expect them to bring anywhere between $60 and $150 each.
What are they made of?
It's just base metal, gilt base metal and diamante, synthetic diamonds if you like. They're not synthetic diamonds, they're just glass, made to look like, brilliance and so forth.
And you're finding there's a bit of a demand for this type
Huge
of thing
demand
at the
for this type of jewellery. They've been making costume jewellery since the 18th century, as far as I'm aware. And it's at the moment it is very big. The 1950s glitzy jewellery with plenty of stones and lots of colour, in nice condition, and people are collecting, various makers of these things. And it's a big market at the moment. Big fashion statement. Find another. I mean,
you could have one on each shoulder.
You could have one on each shoulder. Yes. I've had lots of these. I've had them with stones and without stones, with enamel, without enamel. Mostly it's lions and tigers and things like that. I think I've had a crocodile. I've had a crocodile.
I love how it looks like it's just trying to crawl.
It is,
across.
yes. It's got one arm extended.
Very expressionless.
But this is certainly the first elephant I've ever had.
Yeah.
I think he's great fun.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Julie.
Not at all.
That's excellent.
Welcome to Kalamunda Hotel. I'm Matt Donnelly from Garside and Webb Auctioneers. You're watching Talking Treasures. Today came in a very nice collection of early fishing flies. There's over 200 fishing flies here, mainly Australian and New Zealand types. A wonderful little collection that came in, and thousands of hours of work here. The gentleman that brought them in is actually wanting to sell them, and they're all handmade and many hours of work in each one. A lot of them are made from feather, various little plastics, materials, cotton, with the hook coming out of them. So an absolutely amazing arrangement of fishing flies. Some that he said that never had a bite, and some that were very successful. Also we have there's a number of little fishing reels that came in for it. This is a lovely little stainless steel arrow fishing reel that would have been suited to a small fishing fly rod, and just take a light line. But nice little example. Something like that might bring about $80 at an auction. This one here is a medium-sized one. It should start to be into a little bit of river or mini deep sea. It's called a direct drive, so as it drives along, it's a direct drive onto the reel, and this along the front here scans along and keeps the line in place. So quite an interesting little reel too. That one there probably about $100 to $120. This one here hasn't got a great deal of age, but it's a sea cap, and the sea cap has some plastic as well on it, so it's probably from only about the 50s or 60s, 70s. But this is definitely a deep sea reel, heavy duty line, and for bringing up from the bottom. In front of us was a nice early handmade split rod, which was used for housing a lot of these smaller reels and for fly fishing. But a very interesting collection, a lot of hours of work in there. You can see some of the unique different bird feathers and materials used, a lot of them natural, and very effective in the waters, going through the water, starting to look like insects and replicating insects, so very successful when fishing. But wonderful little collection, and the flies I would think would have to bring a couple of dollars each, and the reels, as we said, a little $400 or $500 collection of fishing reels. So what a lovely collection of fishing flies, very rarely seen on the market. A lot of them have had years of abuse and use, so excellent piece and find for Talking Treasures.